Only a couple days old and I broke my D key. We've got a more permanent solution now. I've ordered finally the replacement keyboard, and this is the day I'm finally going to take care of this problem. This was a temporary solution. All right, so we've turned it over so we can access the screws. There are 5 visible screws, and we're going to remove all of those with just an appropriately sized Phillips screwdriver. Okay, there are also screws that are going to help us access underneath each of these rubber pads. This is a magnetic strip. We've covered it with masking tape so we can label what each of these are. These were the 3 that came off of the back. These 2 were from the front edge of the back. These were the hinges. Okay, next is remove this disk drive, but actually I had to turn the computer back on for just a moment so that it would open the disk drive, and now we can remove it. So you might want to do that before you start this process of removing screws. Okay, now this is the back we just took all the screws out of, and we have the disk drive out. Now this seam is the seam that we're going to split open, and I'm using my thumbnail to get in there because it's the thinnest thing I have, and it's just barely strong enough to do it. We do have this other spatula to, once it's wide enough, to get in there a little better. Okay, so you just have to take your time, work your way around the seam. The corners by these single screws under the rubber pads are the toughest. Keep working it. If you get the rest of it loose, then you can kind of break it free this way. The other trouble spot is over here. This is a very thin strip, but it will pop up with just a little more pressure. So we've gotten this completely free and clear now. Okay, next and most important is remove the battery. And we can do that by just unscrewing in 3 or 4 places. And on mine, there's battery screw here, and also at the top, here and here. Okay, and we're lifting this out and pulling forward slightly. See these pins coming out just like an electrical plug. And this would also be how you would replace your battery in this computer. So this is the hard drive, and to remove it, we're going to follow this connection to its end, which is right here. And rather than pulling it out, there is a little switch, this little black bar on the top. We're going to lift. It's got a tiny little hinge. You can see it's open now. I'm going to close it. Okay, we need to open it, flip it open, so that this can be pulled out, and you must be very, very gentle with this. These connectors are very delicate. And then once this is free, being careful not to crease this or bend it, you can simply lift this hard drive right out of place. So this is the RAM, and to get it out, we have 2 spring-loaded arms over here. If you pull this back, it'll pop up for you. You can gently slide it out. All right, so this is the motherboard, this bluish area here. This is one plastic piece, and there are 4 screws we're removing. There's one over here, one here, one over here, and here. To remove the fan, I'm removing 3 screws. Okay, now the motherboard is much freer than it was before, but we can see that it's anchoring over here, so it's going to be probably sliding this way after we get this free. But before we do that, there are more more things connected we're going to have to remove. Again, being very delicate with them each. So we loosened the fan enough that we can move these cables free of this little metal partition. Okay, so the fan is loose. We're needing to just pull this back. See how springy that is? We want to pull it back enough that, and kind of lift at the same time. There, now it's free of these 4 little slots. Okay, so this end is free. This end and this side is free, but this side is not. There's a few more connectors that we're going to need to lift. Very, very delicate. Okay. And this is also going to come unclipped. So this one, to separate toward the end, I'm using just my fingernail. So don't scratch anything. You can see that's slightly separated now. I'll do that over here. All right, so working from this end now, everything is already loose. You can see this is about to come up. The only place where we're sticking now is right at the end. So we're going to pull this way gently to slide out of those areas. I'm going to anchor it in the back here so I can just pull very gently. Okay, we cannot quite slide it out yet because this little guy is bracketing in the last corner, what we think is the last corner. Okay, we're going to lift this metal piece we already unscrewed earlier. Just lifts right out. We're going to lift up and over this thread, up and slightly out toward me, and up and over this little peg. See that tiny little black peg? Lift that up. Okay, so we're still caught under here. We just need a little more clearance. So this post, I'm just going to lift this metal bracket slightly. And that's all it needed, was just a tiny bit. All right, we're still tethered here. The last tether. All right, this is the Wi-Fi card, and we need to take get these wires cleared now. And before we remove them, take note of what order they're in. There's a black tag here that says 2, and there's a white tag here. You might barely be able to see that has a number 1 on it. Tiny little markings here for black and white. So that will be the order they go back on. And these just pop off. Okay, the fan will be easier dealing with if we remove it. To remove the fan, pull this plug straight out. The black comes out of the white frame around it. Might have to dig your fingernails under there. This also pulls straight out. The tabs on the side are to help you get it out gently. Okay, and now we have nothing tethering the board at all. Okay, so the way this is assembled underneath is with a heat stake process, which basically means little tiny sticks of plastic coming up through these holes, and then they get melted into place. So there are no more screws at this point. So in order to get this metal plate off now, the only way is to remove the extra melted plastic, and that is going to happen with just a regular chisel. So now we're going to take a good sharp chisel and very carefully scrape off that little tiny pool of melted plastic. So to remove the plastic, there's a little slot down here to allow the ribbon to not get yanked. Okay, there were some additional heat stakes under this tape. Okay, if we're lifting this up, it's free now except for back here, and it's just a couple little tabs. We're going to just lift it so we can access the keyboard. Finally, we can see underneath here. This is it. We have more heat stakes to deal with under here, and then it will be free itself. So after scraping off the first few heat stakes from around the edges, start lifting, and it felt like it was connected, and it was. We're just forcing it up at this point, putting our hand underneath. This is a more substantial one. We're going to have to scrape that off, but these smaller ones popped right off. I'm going to pull some more of this up. Very careful with this ribbon here. And there is the keyboard. So this is the old one that we've removed, and this is the new one with the same cables. We're going to put this keyboard in now and secure it down with the heat stakes now, or new ones actually. This just gets peeled back. Okay, so we're feeling this to make sure this is very flat. All right, so we have several tools here to get the heat stakes to actually stick again. One is the soldering iron, one is a little stick of plastic that we're going to melt into that hole just enough so we have just enough plastic that we can kind of stamp it with the eraser once it's soft. So you'll see what I mean in a second. All right, so we have heat staked in every place that it looked like there was that before, and we are laying the plastic back on, putting everything back together, just in reverse order. Okay, so everything's back together, everything's secured, all these little connections. So we're putting the corners in, this edge first. Those were the toughest to get out, so we're putting them in first. And it's snapping back in place. Okay, so these notes by each type of screw really helped a lot. So my keyboard was broken, and now it's fixed. And I can type the letter D, which I couldn't before, and all the other keys work. And even the illumination or the backlight works. And the computer itself works, even after it was all disassembled. It's all put back together, and I'm ready to start my work day again.